Switzerland is the only country in the world that no army can conquer. For over 200 years, no one has dared to attack it. Not even Hitler, who conquered all of Europe, dared to attack little Switzerland. In a few minutes, you will learn why an attack on Switzerland would end in disaster for any army, the terrifying secret of the cute Swiss houses, and why this country would be the safest place in the event of a nuclear war. This is Hustler Channel. Enjoy watching. This is Switzerland. The secret of the country's invulnerability lies in its geography. Look here. On this side of the country, there are the Alps mountains. Here are more mountains, and there are mountains, and there, mountains, and even more mountains here. Although it may not be so important, all the major cities are located in this narrow strip called the Swiss Plateau. This is where all the beauty we know so well is found. Swiss banks with gold, hills with cheese farms, exquisite wine, a drop of which costs as much as a one-bedroom apartment in the center of Lviv. All borders pass through the mountains. This means that if you suddenly crave chocolate and decide to attack Switzerland, you will have only two possible paths, here and here. Let's focus on the first one. This is where it gets really interesting. How do you like these little houses you see on the screen? Nice, right? However, believe me, you definitely shouldn't visit them, because these are not ordinary houses but real hidden bunkers. Behind the windows where enemy drones will fly, there are not only jars of pickled cucumbers, but also the power of artillery shells. These bunkers cannot be distinguished from ordinary cottages, so often even neighbors had no idea. Why did Switzerland build them in the first place? I'll tell you, not to hide it from enemy soldiers. You will be surprised, but the main goal of such interesting camouflage is not to scare away tourists. Switzerland is associated with neutrality and a sense of security. And let's agree, a 5-meter wonder tank in the middle of the street doesn't quite embody that association. It is very sad to realize that Switzerland's neutrality is not that simple. During World War II, the situation was terrifying for Switzerland. On one side, there was Hitler's Germany, on the other, fascist Italy. Occupied by Hitler, France was to the west, and tension in the country was rising. Add to that the fact that by that time, Hitler had already invaded neutral Belgium and the Netherlands. Switzerland was actively preparing for a possible invasion. From that moment, the transformation of the country into a solid fortress began. Giant anti-tank structures were installed throughout the country. Concealed anti-tank guns were placed along all roads, disguised as ordinary sheds. And right in the heart of the Alps, landing strips for airplanes were built. Since then, the Swiss became strong paranoids. Even after the war, they continued to make their country even more impregnable. This has led to the fact that currently, all tunnels, bridges, and other important infrastructure are wired with explosives inside and can be detonated in a matter of seconds to prevent the enemies from using them. In addition, the Swiss have another fascinating skill. They are exceptionally good at tunneling through mountains. Tunnels are synonymous with Switzerland, and one of the most notable ones is a nearly 60-kilometer-long tunnel. In the Alps, they have constructed an extensive network of tunnels that connect mountain military bases and bunkers. You may have already noticed that the Swiss Alps are perhaps the most militarized mountains in the world. Just imagine, these picturesque mountains conceal around 26,000 secret bunkers and artillery pieces. They are so masterfully disguised that they are nearly impossible to detect. For instance, you see a cannon here, but it is actually located here. Unfortunately, many of these bunkers are currently abandoned and appear quite eerie. Why not try to find one of them during your next trip to Switzerland? It's a fantastic alternative to mundane sightseeing. But that's not all. Can you imagine a secret aviation base with military fighter jets soaring above? Such bases exist in Switzerland. Within minutes, several fighter jets appear out of nowhere, neutralize enemy aircraft or missiles, and swiftly return to the base. That's the tactical approach of the Swiss military aviation. Adding to that, Switzerland has developed a very specific strategy for dealing with enemies in case of invasion. They essentially evacuate most of their army from cities and relocate them to secret bunkers, where they continue the fight. What does the Swiss army look like, you might wonder? Here's how a typical Swiss soldier is envisioned by most people. However, the reality is quite different. Every able-bodied male in Switzerland is required to undergo basic military service. Afterward, men are obligated to participate in 3 weeks of specialized training each year. Moreover, all the weapons and equipment are retained by individuals after their military service. In case of need, Switzerland can instantly mobilize nearly all its male population for war. While some demilitarization and downsizing of the military have taken place in recent years, as well as the removal of explosives from under bridges, one thing that remains unchanged is that Switzerland will always be the safest place on Earth in the event of a nuclear war. This is because Switzerland is the only country in the world with enough bomb shelters to accommodate all of its citizens. By law, every building constructed after 1978 is required to have a bomb shelter capable of withstanding the blast of a 12-megaton nuclear bomb at a distance of 700 meters. Currently, there are approximately 9 million shelter spaces in Switzerland, while the country's population stands at 8.6 million people. These shelters can range from small private residences to massive underground facilities capable of housing up to 2,000 individuals for 4 months. The entire population of the country can seek refuge during a nuclear strike and then continue the fight. This means that in the event of a nuclear war, only cockroaches, rodents, and 8.5 million Swiss citizens will remain alive. Now let's talk about the most powerful weapon that Switzerland possesses. It's a weapon that has allowed them to maintain neutrality for centuries and protect against hostile intentions. That weapon is money. Switzerland is one of the wealthiest countries in the world, ranking 5th in terms of GDP per capita. For comparison, the United States ranks 7th in this ranking. Major Swiss cities such as Zurich, Bern, and Geneva are global financial centers. Influential people from around the world keep their money in Swiss banks. In a Swiss bank, you can find the assets of American businessmen, Russian officials, and Chinese officials all at the same time. Therefore, waging war against Switzerland would not be advantageous for any of them. Instead of fighting with Switzerland, they make deals. And it's quite easy to make deals with Switzerland. The country doesn't take sides in global conflicts. It doesn't belong to any political blocs. It's not a member of the EU, and it doesn't use the euro. Just imagine. Switzerland only joined the UN in 2002. It cooperates with anyone who wants to cooperate with it, even if it's a killer or a criminal. You probably already guessed whom I'm talking about. Russia, of course. It would be difficult to miss the news headlines like, "Neutral Switzerland imposes sanctions on Russia under international pressure, freezing $6.7 billion of Russian assets." Sounds good, doesn't it? However, few people take into account the fact that Swiss banks currently hold about $200 billion belonging to Russia. Switzerland remains a neutral country and has no intention of breaking this historical tradition. Its neutrality and well-thought-out military strategy, which relies on the optimal use of natural conditions and available resources, allow Switzerland to be a safe and successful country for centuries. That was the segment about Switzerland. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. This was Hustler. Until next time.